One of the surprise hits from 2012 was Far Cry 3 from Ubisoft, a game that almost finally found its footing after, two installments that were okay but not great. And obviously, they're coming back with another sequel. It's taking us to a brand new island, or an area even this time, the Himalayas. And you know what? It's looking great. It's looking more of the same, but really, that's all you could really ask for from Far Cry at this point.
We've sort of talked back and forth about Far Cry recently, just because it's a series that never really quite had a sense of exactly what it was. First one was on an island, which I guess becomes something of a theme, but
Yeah.
in terms of gameplay into Far Cry 2 and then Far Cry 2 to Far Cry 3, it wasn't a huge amounts of similarities. Open world-ish, sandboxy, but there
Yeah.
wasn't very much necessarily connected them. They could almost be completely different franchises.
Yeah, I mean, this time they're not doing any of that. They've learned what works and what doesn't. They know what players like and what they don't, and they're basically just building on that and making sure that the mechanics and systems in play, things like the emergent sort of environmental storytelling and those crazy moments that just come out of nowhere, they're being improved and they're being pumped into the single player and basically making sure that the game is as fun as possible for players that do not care about whatever ridiculous single player is sort of unraveling.
I guess the other thing we've kind of been going back and forth on recently is whether or not this one is really different enough from Far Cry 3. I mean, that's the one benefit of these games having not really had too many connecting threads, is that they've always been very, very different. So each one comes along and it's like, oh, this is actually quite surprising. It's got something new here. So what would you say are the kind of the key new things in Far Cry 4 maybe people aren't seeing yet?
Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of key new mechanics, there's not a great deal of things, but everything is being streamlined. So now if you're driving, and of course you're going to get those really lengthy chase missions again, it means you don't have to try and maneuver your car in front of other cars to try and slow them down so they get out and then you shoot them. Instead, you can now shoot out of the window. You can sort of leap dynamically between cars, which should make all of those chase sequences a hell of a lot more fun. And on top of that, the whole sort of world is just being opened up a little bit more. So very early on, you're going to get the sort of wingsuit. So now you can climb these ridiculously beautiful looking mountains and explore from the get-go. There's no way, wading through God knows how many hours of crap to get the cool stuff. And we're seeing in this as an early example, you can get a grappling hook now, which is going to let you scale environments, get across cliffs. And it means you're not going to be sort of finding all these cool areas and then being stuck without anywhere to go, which, is such a small change to the core Far Cry formula, but it's essential really at this point.
Absolutely. I guess at this point we should probably just mention that this is a live gameplay demo that's showing PlayStation 4 code, but as we understand it, it should be virtually
Fairly
identical,
similar
if
across
not
the board.
absolutely identical to the Xbox One. But it's just a good example of how the game's going to play from moment to moment. And yeah, it does have that kind of great Far Cry 3 feeling, which is just go into an area, scope it out, work out how it is you think you might best be able to move around it. Play it stealth, play it a bit more kind of aggressively if we want to. At the minute, we're seeing some nice sort of stealth kind of gameplay. And I guess the other key thing that's being added is co-op.
Yeah, co-op as well, and this is something that I can't wait to get involved in because they know everyone loves doing the outposts. I mean, that was a ridiculous success. So now they've got these fortresses instead, which are basically outposts with the difficulty rammed up to maximum. So you're going to need a friend coming in on that. So they've got these two-person gyroscopter things with two of you can ride in, scope out environments. You could drop one off with the wingsuit, flying from top while the other person gets outside. Maybe hops on the back of an elephant, storms the gates, or who knows. It's really just open to, up to you what you want to do. And I think that's really where Far Cry 4 is going to find its success, is giving you as much choice and freedom to do whatever the hell you like and just letting you run wild in this beautiful world they've created, which I don't think we've really talked on that much yet, but it looks stunning. It absolutely looks amazing.
It's a really wonderful choice of location. I think it gives them so much scope for very different types of landscape and, from mountains into jungle almost, from one step to another. And, looking fantastic on next gen, obviously. But also, I think, kind of importantly, adding a lot of verticality to the game, which wasn't there before.
Yeah, totally. And I think that plays into sort of where the wingsuit and the grappling hook and what have you's coming into play. They know that players like exploring these sorts of open worlds in ways that maybe Fallout and Skyrim never let you really do. So I'm just genuinely excited about if I see a mountain, I can go and scale it and then get down from it just as easily. Well, not just easy, but just as quickly. And that for me is genuinely exciting. These are games where you can really just lose yourself and lose your time in. And, I think that's key as Ubisoft moves forward, because Far Cry is so different to everything else that they're doing. You can see similar threads between Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs and even Division, even though it's not here yet. And just Far Cry is something entirely different from everything else they're doing.
It's a nice change of pace, really. I think not just because of having the sort of co-op element, giving you a little bit more of a different kind of gameplay experience. But as you say, just that you've got the Clancy games, and they all have a kind of thematically a little bit similar in a way. But Rainbow Six Siege, for instance, is another FPS Ubisoft are making, but it's not going to be anything like this.
Yeah.
Although nicely, they are both kind of playing with ideas of empowering you, the player, to play the way you want to play, approach missions in a way that suits you, that you think is best, and letting you play co-op. But these are all things I think that are becoming more and more important for this generation. It's just giving players choice, letting the player decide the parameters by which they're going to sort of judge how well they've done, and take things the way they want to go.
Totally. I think this is the sort of time we're a year on. By the time Far Cry 4 hits shelves, we're going to be a year on from the Xbox One's launch. And now we're really starting to see developers get to grips with the console and the system and the architecture. We're really starting to see what next gen can deliver. Far Cry 4, even though it has similarities to Far Cry 3, just the scale of it and the sort of emergence of all of the different systems at play, it doesn't look like something that they could have achieved on last gen consoles. And I think that's key at this point, because there's not a lot coming out for last gen anymore, and really this is the time where you're going to be wanting to upgrade. And thankfully there is plenty coming out this year. Despite all of the delays, there's still plenty coming out. I think Far Cry 4, despite everything else that's coming, is probably going to be one of the better games coming out.
It's looking bigger, it's looking an awful lot bolder, and I think because it has those few similarities, it's going to be so consistent experience. That's what I'm most looking forward to. I think it's going to be a really solid game to play.